Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for today's edition of Arkansas Alive. And thank you for watching VTN, the Victory Television Network. We appreciate your support and your prayers. This week, we're talking about 17 principles of personal achievement. We've got a real problem in our country today and even into the church where people have lost incentive to perfect themselves, to better themselves. And so I hope these scriptures this week and the teaching this week helps you. And so stay tuned. Arkansas Alive starts right now. You know, I have heard for years that you can tell what kind of church you're going to by the sign outside. And there's a lot of truth to that. If it has a name, just look at the name. See what the name says. What does it stand for? And that's probably what you're going to find inside. I've also heard it said that if you drive by somebody's home and you see into their garage, that's what you're going to find inside the home. If you drive by and somebody's got their garage door up, or if they don't have a garage door, they have a carport, the what you see in that garage is what you're going to find in that home. If that garage, some people's garage is so full of junk they can't get the car in it. They park the car outside. Well, that's the way it is probably in the home. It's probably the same way. Consequently, now I'm not trying to meddle or offend here, but this all has to do with personal achievement. If you look at somebody's dress, the way they are dressed in different situations, it tells you a lot about the person on the inside. Now, I understand, or there should be a difference in your dress and your appearance when you go to work, when you go to church, when you go to play ball, when you do hunting, fishing. Your dress is going to be some according to what you're doing. But by and large, you look at the person, and I'm not talking about judging, but you can ascertain what the person is like by the way they're dressed. Examples. I went out to the airport, this was several years ago, to get a ticket, to prepay a ticket to fly somewhere. And I just happened to be there while I was working, doing some outdoor chores or what. I had a moment, and it's a long way to the airport from my house, maybe 15, maybe 20 miles. I have never timed it, but it's quite a ways. It takes 45 to 50 minutes to get there. So I didn't want to change clothes. I didn't want to wait anymore. So I just jumped in my car and had on blue jeans and a jacket. And I went out there, and I looked like I'd been working in the yard. And I went up and told the lady that I wanted a ticket to so-and-so, and I was there to pay for it. And so she looked at me and she went and got the material. Now this was several years ago. Now you can buy your ticket online or whatever. You don't ever have to go to the airport. But I went out there and I stood in line. I got my ticket. And this lady looked at me, and when she got through sizing me up, she told me, she said, "Now, Mr. Caldwell, you know if you lose this ticket, you can't get on the airplane. So don't lose this ticket." I mean, she was talking to me like, the way she talked to me, like I was some kind of dummy, that if I lost the ticket, I couldn't get on the plane. I said, "Don't worry, ma'am, I won't lose the ticket." So I went back out there a few days or a week later for something else, and I just come from the office, and I was dressed in a suit, a coat and a tie, and I walked out there, and I was treated totally different. They talked to me differently. They talked to me like I had a brain and could think, and I was intelligent. They were impressed. And I thought, that's hypocrisy. That's the difference. They dealt with me according to the way I was dressed. Now, Jeannie and I dress basically the same all the time. Of course, when we come to the studio or the office, we're usually dressed in a coat and a tie, and she's dressed nicely. But there are a lot of times where we, especially her, she will dress up like she's going to church almost every day of the week. And I asked her one time, I said, why are you so dressed up? She looked at me, she said, well, I'm not dressed up. I said, oh, yes, you are. You're dressed up like we're going to church and we're just going out to eat lunch or something, or maybe going to an appointment. And she says, well, my mother used to teach me and my sisters, there were 3 or 4 sisters. She said, our mother used to teach us to always look our best, to always dress up wherever we're going, whatever we're doing. Now, I excluded, of course, if you're going to a ball game or whatever. But she said we were always taught, and my wife was an executive secretary to the president of the Bankers Association for many, many years. When we met, that's what she was, a career professional. And she dressed according to the work standards downtown in the banking business. But she continued to dress that way all her life, even when she wasn't working. I said, why do you do that? She said, my mother taught me to always look your best, always dress up. She always does. I tell you, I remember we were in a car wreck several years ago, and Jeannie had to go through rehab to get back total function over her legs and whatever. And it was pretty serious for a while. And so she was in rehab, and I stayed there with her. And every morning before she would go down for rehab, she was sitting over there at that little vanity in the room, fixing her face and her hair, putting on her jewelry, her necklace, and getting all dressed up just to go to rehab to learn how to climb stairs. I said, what are you doing? She said, I always want to look my best. She does to this day. When we go shopping somewhere, and just a few weeks ago we went to 2 or 3 department stores, and it never fails. Every time we walk into a store, someone always greets us and says, you all look so nice. You're all dressed up. We're not really dressed up to go shopping. That's just the way we look. We're doing this out of honor and respect for the Lord, for each other. When I go to church on Sunday, I don't dress up to be seen. I don't dress up to show anything off. I go to church on Sunday to honor God, to honor the Lord. That's why I dress up. I do everything that I do in honor of the Lord, in respect of God. If I go with someone, let's say I go to Washington, D.C., and I do every year with CUFI, Christians United for Israel, Pastor John Hagee. I've been a member of the board of that organization for 16, 18 years. We go up and down Constitution Hall. We go up and down congressional offices. Everybody has on a coat and a tie. We're no different. What are they doing? They're honoring their profession. I was at a hospital visiting with a couple, and the they're both members of our church. This was years ago too. And the wife was telling me, they're both deceased now in heaven, but the wife was telling me what her husband was in there for, and he was going to have surgery. And she said, oh, I'd like for you to meet our doctor. Well, he just happened to walk in the room at the time. And she said, I want to introduce you to our doctor, Pastor Caldwell. This is Dr. So-and-so. Now, this guy, and again, this is not a prejudgment. This is just making this point. This guy had on blue jeans, a T-shirt, tennis shoes. The blue jeans had holes in them, and he had a do-rag around his head, a bandana around his head. He's the doctor. He's got stethoscope hanging out of his ears. He's got on a green. And I thought to myself, you know, I don't know if I'd want a doctor operating on me that looked like that. If he doesn't have any better presence to dress himself up and make himself look presentable, if he's that sloppy on the outside, he might be sloppy in the operating room. He might not have it all together just because he's got DR behind his name or in front of his name. So you have to make sure that you are going to represent the Lord, and you need to make sure that you are going to always represent God in your dress, because whatever you look like out on the outside is probably what's on the inside. Now let's go to this principle of personal achievement. Clearly define your purpose. It's the beginning of all achievement. Without purpose and without plan, people drift aimlessly through life. If you don't have a purpose, what is your purpose? I don't know. If you don't have a purpose in life, if you don't have a planned purpose for a day, for a week, a month, a year, you're probably just going to drift through life and just bump into things, you know, whatever will be, will be. So personal achievement covers a lot of territory. One, clearly define your purpose. Let's go to Proverbs 29 and verse 18. Proverbs 29 and verse 18. And if you have your Bible, make a mark here so that you can go back and refresh yourself. Proverbs 29, verse 18. Where there is no vision, people perish. Where there's no vision, people perish. Where there's no vision, people are restrained. If you have no vision, no clear-cut vision, no defined purpose of where you're headed, where you're going. I mean, if you leave home today and you say, I'm going to the store. Well, okay, you have a clear, defined purpose. If you just leave home, you don't have any clear, defined purpose, you're liable to wind up anywhere. And a lot of people live their lives that way. We have no clear, defined purpose. What are you trying to accomplish? I remember when Jeannie and I got married, and we've been married 55 years now. When we got married and we were building a house and we wanted to pay it off for a number of years until we got it paid off, we set our vision, our clear-cut vision, on paying off that debt. And finally one day, we accomplished it. And we had no more debt. We didn't have any other debt except our house, so we have no debt. We cut a clear purpose. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take so much money and set it aside every month. And sometimes you can pay double your house note and pay it off quicker. But however you decide to do it, you have to have a clearly defined purpose. We're going to get this done. Maybe it's a car, maybe it's a vacation, maybe it's education. You have to have a clear, defined purpose, an achievement. Without purpose and plans, people drift aimlessly through life. Now, let's look at Habakkuk chapter 2. Habakkuk is a very interesting contributor to the Bible, or Habakkuk, however you want to say it. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 1. Now listen to what the word says. I will stand upon my watch That was his sphere of influence, his time. If you've ever been in the military, I was in the Navy for 6 years, and you had to stand watch. I've heard Andrew Womack talk about his time in the Army. He had to stand bunker duty. He had to stand, we all had to, anybody in the military understands standing your watch. Your watch time is what you're assigned to do. And you're responsible for what goes on in the field, in the barracks, aboard ship. You stand your watch. And he said, I will set me upon the tower. I will watch to see what God will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved, or when I am confronted. And the Lord answered me and said, you're writing, taking notes, write this down. Write the vision. What is your vision? Do you even have one? It says where there is no vision, people fail, people die. Where there's no vision, people perish. He said, write the vision down and make it plain upon tables. Pastors, if you have a vision for the church that's given to you by God, and you'd be amazed at the number of pastors, they don't know why they're pastoring. They don't know what God had planned for the church. They don't have any vision. They hadn't written it down, and consequently the congregation doesn't even know why the church exists. You have to make it plain. Write it down. Here's what God told us we were to do. We're to reach our city, state, nation, and world. Okay, that's part of the vision. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Does everybody in the congregation know that? If it's a business owner, if you're building something, working something, accomplishing something, does everybody know what they're there for? Does everybody know what the vision of the corporation or the church or the ministry or the family, does everybody know what they're there for, what they stand for? He said, write it down, make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. I had a businessman tell me one time, and he was a very wealthy businessman, he was worth millions, and he told me, he said, God blessed me and told me that he wanted to use me to make money for me to give it away. That was his vision. All his life, and I don't know if he's still alive or not, but when I met him, he was in his 60s, and that was 20 years ago. He may still be alive, but he's still making money. He made his money first in real estate, and then he started minting his own gold. Right, his own gold coins. And he told me, he said, my whole purpose in life is to make money to give it away. Wow. Can you imagine what churches would be like today if their members, those that are called to do it, would make money to give it to the church or to give it to ministry? We had a donor back when we were building VTN. This was 30 years ago. And we were building VTN, building the first station, and it was quite a challenge. It was several $1 million, and we asked people to give. Churches gave, people gave, our church gave. It was a vision that God gave us. VTN is God's vision, and he told us he wanted us to build it. And there was a lady that was watching the network every day. She lived in Hot Springs. She's since died and gone to heaven. But I knew her family. I didn't know them as well until I started getting checks from her family. Her family owned a lot of timber and mineral rights and so forth. Her husband had died, and she was getting the royalty checks off of all of their holdings, which was gas and timber and oil and so forth. And so she sent us a check for $50,000 to help build VTN. So I knew the name, I just had never met her. So I called her, and I thanked her for her generous donation. And she told me, she said, well, my husband was a businessman, and he made a lot of investments, and owned a lot of property, and when he died, I get all of the interest, income, and so forth, and whatever it is that they owned. And she said, I get all of this money, and she said, and I don't need it, and I don't have anything else to do with it. So every time I get a dividend check, you're going to get a check. She sent 3 checks over a period of time for $50,000. That's $150,000 that she sent to help build VTN. Now, if you walk through our offices, you will see that we dedicated our green room to her and her family. If you walk down the hall, you'll see other dedications to ministry leaders and churches. If you go into our master control room, you'll see there's a plaque outside thanking a particular ministry for sending the money to build this and to build that. And some of them still do it today. They have a lot of things to give to, but they're purposed in their hearts to help preach the gospel. That's their vision. And you write it down, you make it plain upon the tables. I want to tell the end of the story of the lady that was sending the $50,000 checks from Hot Springs. Every time she'd get a dividend check, she'd send us one, until one day the checks stopped. And so we called to see if she was all right. And her family said, yes, she's fine, she passed, she's in heaven, and there won't be any more checks. I thought, well, thank God for the ones that she sent. But that was her desire to help promote the gospel. So, you and I should thank people like that. They're the ones that help build VTN to reach around our state and now around the world through Roku and live stream. Wow, those were people that had a vision. So write it down, make it plain upon the tables, that he may run that readeth it. So pastors, you ought to write the vision down. We had our vision done in calligraphy, framed and put on the wall in the back of the church so everybody that walked past it could read it. Here's the vision of the church. And the next verse says, and make it plain upon the tables, that he may run that readeth it, for the vision is for an appointed time. But at the end it shall speak and not lie, though it tarries, in other words, though it might take a while, wait for it, don't be impatient, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. In other words, it will not come to pass, but wait for it, be patient. Okay, if you have a clearly defined purpose, that's a vision. And it'd be best if you get your vision from God, because a lot of people have made up visions on their own, not necessarily God, and they didn't come to pass. Why? God didn't tell them to do it. I've had minister friends. I've gotten their newsletters, and thus saith the Lord, he told us to build this, he told us to do that. And I knew in my spirit that was not true. Not criticizing or judging, but I just knew in my spirit, I had the gift of discerning of spirits, and I knew that was not God. Several years went by, and what they had proposed to build and what they said that was their vision never got built and never came to pass. So I asked a man that was involved in the ministry, I said, do you know about this? He said, oh yeah. I said, well, what happened? He said, God never told him to build that. That was something that he wanted to do. And there's nothing wrong with that either. Nothing wrong for you, doing something for God. That's what you want to do. But God didn't tell him to do it. So if God didn't tell you to do it, or it's not in the Bible, not in the Word, God's not obligated to finance it or to build it, to send the money to do it. So clearly define your purpose. In the beginning of all achievement, you have to have a purpose, a vision. And notice it says, and at the end, the vision will speak. Well, it sure is here. The vision is speaking 24/7 all around the world. And it's because God spoke it to us. All right, the next principle of personal achievement is become single single-minded. Become single-minded. Focus on one thing. One thing. Go over to Philippians chapter 3. Now, we read this the other day, but I want to read it according to this particular principle. Philippians chapter 3, the Apostle Paul, he said there's one thing, and I want us to concentrate on this. Go back to, I went too far. No, I didn't go too far. I didn't go far enough. Go to Philippians chapter 3, and let's look at verse 13. Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, reaching forth unto those things which are before, I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. So he's saying, forget the things that are behind. I'm focused on one thing and one thing alone. You sometimes get in trouble when you try to do too much. You try to do too many things. Just focus on one thing. Focus on one thing at a time. Now, it might help to go over to James. Let's go over there. Let's go to James chapter 1. Whoa, we're running out of time again. I'm going to have to hurry up because I don't know if we'll get through with all this. 17 principles of personal success. Okay. James, and we'll start here tomorrow. James chapter 1, verse 8. It says, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. If you're trying to do too much, you're double-minded. Concentrate on one thing at a time. And I know there are people that try to be multitask-oriented, but according to the Scriptures, you need to think on one thing at a time. Now, join me for tomorrow's Arkansas Live, and we'll continue with principles of personal achievement. Remember, Jesus is Lord of Arkansas, and where you're watching, too.
Send your questions, comments, and testimonies to Happy Caldwell at Post Office Box 26207, Little Rock, Arkansas 72221, or email happycaldwell@vtntv.com. Remember to follow VTN on Facebook at VTN Your Arkansas Christian Connection, and follow Happy Caldwell on X at Happy_Caldwell. VTN is on Roku. Search VTN in the channel store and add us to your lineup. Today's episode is available to watch on demand at VTNTV.com and click Watch. You can also watch VTN via live stream at VTNTV.com.